Hello, everybody, and welcome to the COVID-19 crisis, How to Revive the Health and Fitness Industry webinar. My name is Marian Podolanu, and I'm the founder of Fitness Professionals Alliance, a Europe-active accredited academy. And today, guys, when we go through these presentations, it's a series, by the way, I've prepared a series of 3 presentations. Each one of them will revolve around a specific key considerations. First one will be financial. And here we're talking about financial aid and support and ways to compensate for the losses that the COVID-19 crisis has imposed in our sector. The second one is operational. And this is where we go through operating times, staff considerations, member adherence requirements, and other matters. And last but not least, what does this new reality, as many have called it, implies towards our business model. And I know that a lot of us have a lot of business models out there, so we're going to be covering some, I would say, fundamental considerations for you to address in your specific operation. Now, first and foremost, we're going to be going through these financial considerations. Now, this presentation is specific for people in position of decision-making, let's say. People that advocate for the fitness industry, government bodies, Olympic committees, etc. First and foremost, we're going to be discussing tax reductions and external cost reductions, access to capital, and then employee assistance. And finally, how do I personally see our industry moving forward? First of all, let's get some context here. A lot of operators have reported at least a third of their revenue lost for 2020 so far. Now, this might trickle in further losses down the line, and they might be compensated for later on in the year as probably more exercises will join the health and fitness industry. A few companies froze their businesses entirely and are not paying employee salaries. Now, this is not an easy process to go through, and that meant for a lot of them it's going to be more difficult to restart their business, but due to low financial resources, in order to keep the business on paper open and not go bankrupt, this was the only other option. At this point, we know that Gold's Gym in the US are going through restructuring under Chapter 11, which is their bankruptcy law. And I'm sure that other businesses around the world have faced such pressure. It is encouraging to see that in China, nobody was laid off. And a lot of clubs managed to open their doors, but not all of them stayed open. And that's an important key point to keep in mind. It's not enough to open the businesses. We want to make sure we can keep them open moving forward. Again, we know that we're going to be experiencing lower visit numbers in our clubs, and we want to make sure that we tackle that proactively so that we limit the revenue loss and the number of accounts expiring. So, reducing external costs. First of all, it will be great if we can reduce taxation, at least on a temporary basis. Okay. Ideally, we would want to eliminate it altogether, as any industry would, but we understand that the country must balance its income versus its cost as well, and that delicate balance, it needs to be understood, and we don't want to be overreaching. However, taxation is one area where it would be great to eliminate, at least on a temporary basis. We could defer pensions and social security contributions. And this is important because, again, they're quite a lot on quite a high cost on our payrolls. Last but not least, another initiative that I heard about, it's quite interesting, is to channel financial resources through tax benefits for a proposed amount of about 400 euros or dollars per person per year. So basically, if a person joins the club, and they pay $400 a year on their membership, they can take that receipt, file it with their taxes, and get a discount on their taxes for that amount, or maybe a portion of that amount. but it's just another way to incentivize the population to stay active, while at the same time supporting the fitness industry, reducing healthcare costs, and providing a path for people to, to just get healthier and fitter. Okay, let's move on. Reduce external costs. Another one would be to reduce or to defer rent costs. And this is where you have to speak to your landlord and address this matter. Some companies in China have deferred waived 1 or 2 months worth of rent. And that's very, very encouraging. Another one would be to redistribute loans. If you do have current loans, I would encourage you to revisit that with your bank ASAP and figure out ways to redistribute those loans. Bear in mind, you don't know for how many months you'll still be closed. And therefore, you have to collaborate closely on when that loan period needs to resume. Last but not least, let's see if we have any due payments. And this is, I'm referring here to payments towards maybe a company that you've bought a service from, maybe a company that has built your website recently, right? They need to get their money, but can they get them into installments over a longer period of time? And any other service providers outside of banks, landlords, and the government. All right. It's important to understand that we must gradually reintroduce contribution payments and taxes. It cannot be a 0 to hero situation in the space of a day. That will destabilize the industry. Banks, they must work with clubs and find ways to assess and redistribute loan payments. But how does that happen? Each bank have their own policy, and as long as the communication is transparent and clear, hopefully you can reach an agreement with your bank on how to redistribute those loans. But initiate the discussion early, be proactive. Taxation. Now, 2 very important words in this sentence: with notice and gradually. So if, let's say, taxation in Jordan at the moment is 16%, let's say it went down to 0 for month 1 and month 2, and then month 3 we see that the clubs are opening and some income is coming in, then maybe a 4% tax will be imposed for the month, for the 3rd or 4th month. Then a 6% tax for the next one, 8%, etc. So it's a taxation schedule that businesses understand from the get-go, because this means they can plan their pricing strategy, their promotions, their income, and they can gradually restore their business to normality. But if that is not to be done and it just comes in automatically at 100%, make sure that the notice given to the businesses is sufficient. By sufficient, it depends on each country and whether they had taxation before or they don't. Some government might choose to increase taxation because of the higher costs of running the country. So, don't be surprised if in your particular business, you see that your taxes might go up later in the year. Again, emphasizing on this gradual aspect to the process. No surprises or sudden moves, because it's a very volatile and delicate situation. Access to capital, I think we all need to understand that loan applications do carry a lot of complexity, and a lot of the paperwork for the clubs might not be available, specific for those clubs that actually have operational documents expired, right? Trading licenses and such. So if we find ways to ease the application process, that would make it more feasible. Here I would consider, and I would advise you consider, smaller amounts, a lower degree of complexity, higher amounts, higher requirements. And obviously, if we can find ways to reduce bureaucracy and ensure that clubs can maintain trade licenses easily, maybe renewals and perhaps relax a little bit the terms for obtaining a trade license in this period, so that renewal can be done quite quickly and easily. Access to public grounds. This is an idea that I wanted to float around, and maybe this would work better in community clubs. and clubs that are owned by the government. But it will be great to allow businesses, clubs, fitness clubs, to operate outdoor public grounds, even if they are, let's say, squared off or parceled, because it's easier to maintain social distancing, and people can enjoy the guidance of a trainer. Now we're in May, we're recording this webinar on May 14th. And so for the foreseeable 3, 4, 5 months or so, weather is going to be quite good. Maybe in some countries it will be too hot, like in the GCC, Dubai and such, but in others it will be quite okay. And therefore, is this an opportunity where we can expand the impact that the fitness industry can have? How we do that, I think it depends on each country, each city, and maybe the operator must meet a certain criteria for using those grounds. And in exchange, perhaps the clubs can support their community with having affordable entry fees to their classes, or even maybe offer some free sessions for the public, because it's incredibly important. One of the drivers behind this presentation, very important drivers, is to help people move, right? As we will see in a bit, this is of tremendous importance, and we got some data about that. Employee assistance. So what if in the UK, for instance, the government is paying employees furlough, but if they are to go back to work, then the employer takes over 100% of the pay. Can we have that kind of crossfade into each other, where the employee pays a percentage of the salary in the first 30 days, then maybe a higher percentage in the next 30 days, and on the other hand, the government drops their furlough payments? Again, there's a lot of complexity around that, and maybe it's not easy to implement, but it's incredibly important to try to find ways to kind of fade in and out into this process, because the market, people attending clubs, that number is not going to go up instantly. It will take a few weeks, perhaps even a few months, for confidence to be at a level that enables people to go to the clubs. Increase financial aid for health and fitness professionals who operate as freelancers or self-employed, because they have no other income. There's no salary there for these guys. And two risks we run there. One is they might leave the health and fitness business altogether and update their skills or change their skill set altogether and work within other businesses. And so this is something that we want to be mindful of, because about 47% of fitness professionals were concerned with their job security in the health and fitness business, according to a Europe Active survey done, I think it was last month. And there's another one coming up, another update. And another one from SimSpy UK. They said 75% of fitness professionals, they projected they could survive for 5 to 6 weeks in lockdown. In many countries, lockdown period has exceeded that period of time, and therefore it's important to understand that resources are scarce for a lot of our colleagues in the health and fitness profession. And here's the issue, guys. This is why this is so important. If people are not active, the costs on the country, the costs on all of the businesses, the health sector, the impact on the health sector is just going to be tremendous, right? This slide is, I believe, from Nike report, and it's just incredibly important to keep people active. That's a costing aspect. On the other hand, we understand that here, according to Fitbit, on the week ending on the 22nd of March, we've had about 20% reduction in daily activity, right? 20% reduction. And it's not just not just one pandemic that we're in the middle of. There are actually two. One of them is the inactivity pandemic, which the WHO coined back in 2012, and today the COVID-19 pandemic. And they're both we're frankly speaking interacting, and that's what's going to increase the rate of non-communicable diseases, such as cardiovascular diseases, cancers, diabetes, hypertension, etc. So that being said, we need to get people moving and find ways to do so. The health and fitness industry is a resource to that end, but how we move forward, this is something that we must address, each country must address. In the UK, according to the webinar I've watched, I think it was 2 days ago, the CEO of SimSpa has informed us that apart from the 3 directives that the UK is mandating at the moment, staying at home to protect the NHS and to save lives, they're also adding exercise to the equation, because that will help strengthen the immune system and therefore enable people to become more resilient in dealing with COVID-19 and be staying protected from COVID-19. And this is not just in the UK. Spain as well are making a lot of headway in adding exercise to their recommendations. And my outlook, guys, look, here's the thing. We're getting a lot of attention on how we can help prevent diseases, non-communicable diseases, and strengthen the immune system. And that has not happened so much. I've heard this from professionals in the UK, all over Europe. We know that the WHO has been in touch with organizations around the world, fitness organizations around the world, requiring aid from them to stimulate the physical activity of their communities. So this is amazing to see. I do still see that this in turn will mean that the industry will be driven to increase educational standards and a proliferation of registries of exercise professionals, just like the European registry, the UK registry, the UAE registry, the Saudi registry, and many other registries around the world, the US registry, etc. And this is a good thing because we want fitness professionals to work together, and we want them to be accredited, be registered, and be represented, so that the legitimacy of what we do is recognized nation and worldwide. So at the end of the day, this is my bit. The future is how we want to see it. But never in history did our industry receive such attention for our potential to help and shape our nation's health. So though we're going through a bit of a storm now, as you can see behind me, after a different kind of storm, the way I see things and the way I would encourage you to see things as well is that after every storm, there's always a clearer sky. And through this period, it's important we collaborate, we work well together. And finally, we know that this will not happen by itself. This transition will not happen on its own. We must email, we must collaborate, we must connect with other professionals and engage with our national organizations and the government bodies so that we find the right answers for each market. And we must start that discussion today so that we are ready to serve, ready to help our exercisers in our market. So that being said, guys, these are some of the references that we've included in this presentation. Feel free to check them out. And finally, in the next video, we'll go through operational considerations for fitness facilities to resume operations. Thank you for joining me on this first webinar of this series. Again, my name is Marian Podolanu. I'm the founder of Fitness Professionals Alliance, a Europe-active accredited academy, and I hope you found this webinar helpful. If you have any questions, concerns, in any way I can support you or help you, please reach out. And bear in mind, one more time, that these guidelines and these recommendations, they're just, at the moment, just words on paper, but you have to debate them. You have to find ways to support the industry. And everybody can make a difference. Everybody has a voice. So get involved, and let's make sure that our industry is here to stay and flourishes beyond its previous condition through this entire situation. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. See you in the next video.